Hello, everybody, once again, and thank you so much for continuing with us on that side. For his next keynote, we are honored to have Mr. Francesco Melcarne from IBM with us. IBM, International Business Machines Corporation, produces and sells computer hardware, middleware, and software, and provides hosting and consulting services in areas ranging from mainframe computers to technology. IBM is also a major research organization holding the records for most US patents generated by a business as of 2020 for 27 consecutive years. Invention by IBM include the automated teller machine that you may know as ATM, the floppy disk, and the SQL programming language, among others. IBM is also one of the world's largest employers, with more than 1/3 having already been awarded 5 Nobel Prizes. Here, joining the Best Virtual Summit is Mr. Melcarne. Mr. Melcarne is an executive IT architect at the Federal CTO Office of IBM Europe, having joined IBM in the Center of Research in Rome just after being graduated 30 years ago. In all these years, even if he changed many internal organizations and job roles, he was constantly involved in innovation projects, being currently a member of an international team developing solutions for governmental institutions across Europe. He's also part of the International Standard Organization Technical Committee 307, preparing standards on blockchain, which is the topic of this session. I'll now give the word to Mr. Melcarne, who will explain to us how blockchain predicted to change both our personal and digital identities management can enable or facilitate new ways of exchanging personal health records for tracking the coronavirus spread, but also to use in many other cases. In the meantime, everybody making us company is more than welcome to post questions online, either on Facebook and YouTube, and we hope we'll enjoy this talk as much as we will. Thank you so much, Mr. Melcarne.
So good afternoon to everybody. I'm going to talk about self-sovereign identity. Self-sovereign identity is something that is difficult to pronounce even for mother tongue people. You can imagine for an Italian, but it is a matter that has a lot of implication, starting from human rights. I mean, identity is something that is at the very core of each individual. But we have to understand better what identity is. So in my presentation, I will devote just a bit of time to define what identities mean. Then I will try to explain, we don't have so much time, what is self-sovereign identity. And afterwards, we will try to understand how self-sovereign identity and blockchain can help combat the pandemics. So, coming into the first subject, what is identity? A lot of confusion on this point, because we are accustomed to define identity in many ways. It's not a simple task, but let's try. Everybody of us has a list, as a portfolio of identity documents defining part of his identity. My name, my surname, my birthplace, my birth date is something that is typically associated with identity. But why not my diploma, my academic title, my nationality, but also my social security number, my loyalty number in so many different services, the gym number, you can choose what you want. And when we use these identities, these identity attributes, we use it in some interaction to show our identity to someone else. How we do it? We show a piece of paper, a plastic card, to someone who is able to look at it and find some important information, not only our identity attributes, but also the provenance of these identity attributes. Someone, an issuer, that is a certified issuer that can say, I am Francesco Melcarne, I'm Italian, and you can say on my passport that it has been declared by the Ministry of Interior of Italy. So apart from trying to forge some fake identity documents, this is an analogic process that is simply made by humans. The problem is that on the internet was born without an identity. Each time we interact with a service, we need to interact with an identity provider, which gives us typically a couple of account and password in order to let us in the service. So we have on a side a wallet of identity cards, and in our mind, or someone is noting them on some little sheet of paper, a lot of credentials. I recently read that in the average we have some 191 couple of credentials, a big amount of credentials for any kind of services from government, from any kind of goods and service provider. So, but this does not change the fact that, as a very old joke says, you can say to be who you want on the internet. So let's take a look of a bit of a sort of history, the escalation of the kind of identity services provided to us by different identity service providers. So either we register ourselves with a service that gives us an account and a password, typically, so centralized identity provisioning, or sometimes we can use a single account to access many different services, as it's typically done in governmental services. You can get different services from different agencies, but you can use a single couple of credentials. But also sometimes, and this is called federated identity, also sometimes you can be offered in front of a new service you want to access, and you need to register to that service. You are kindly offered to use one of your social network password in order to avoid to create a new credential. This is user-centric. You feel that like something that pertains to you and belongs to you. We are talking about something new, the decentralized identity in some minutes. Because, and this is a point that we will take into consideration, this user-centric approach is something that is not like it in many environments. As an example, the European Union Commission wants to avoid European Union citizens and business to use social network credentials in order not to provide these identity providers information that can be used to profile your experience on the web. So that's because centralized and federated identity model has this problem that when an issuer issues a digital identity to a holder and the holder presents it to a verifier, the verifier has to call back to the issuer in order, the verifier has to come back to the issuer and disclose the fact that the holder has shown to him this credential. So a bit of information is given back to the issuer that can collect it. Self-sovereign identity. What is self-sovereign identity? I have a dream, someone told in the past, but let's say that the community of people interested into self-sovereign identity have a dream identity management system with all these requirements, apparently fighting each against the other. So let's imagine that instead of having a set of personal identity cards and a set of digital identities, I can get rid of credentials and use my personal identity. As an example, I could have been given a personal identity certification, and I can use it directly because I'm Italian to enter into the Italian governmental services without the need to apply for credentials to enter it. This without cancelling the previous system, but integrating it. And this is another point very interesting because a lot of debate is running against a self-sovereign identity system hosted by governmental organization. You can imagine that as it is done normally on the web for any kind of services, if the service providing you goods or services doesn't want to know your real personal identity, you can, in this new system, create a sort of avatar where you invent, let's say, a fake or a new personal identity and use that to enter the services. Another important point, imagine a system where the administrator of the system runs the system, but don't know nothing about you. And again, another point is that the owner can decide to whom to show his or her attribute identity. And even more, you can imagine a scenario like that. You arrive at an airport and you want to hire a car. You show to the clerk your identity card, where the identity card, the driving license, and obviously a credit card. In my identity card, my name, surname, birthday, birthplace is shown. Birthplace is not interesting to the clerk. And also my marital status. Why I have to show my marital status to the clerk? It's not important for the transaction we are going to run, except my profession and all this stuff. You can imagine a system where you can tailor the information you give to the verifier. Again, another point that is important, that the system leave the responsibility of issuing personal attributes to the usual issuer of these attributes. In Italy, the Ministry of Transportation gives you a driving license. It will be in the future the Ministry of Transportation to give you a driving license. The same is for my personal identity that is normally issued on an identity card by the Ministry of Interior or the municipality. It will be the same in Italy. Another important point is that privacy is protected. GDPR is complied with. This seems a miracle, but it's the subject of the self-sovereign identity. How we arrive at that? It's the convergence of maturing standardization on the field of personal attributes in the W3C and DIF are defining how personal attributes are exchanged, and also by the advent of the blockchain technology. I have no time to enter into many details now. There is a huge literature on that, but you can imagine that for the technical people in the audience, we should move from a traditional public key infrastructure where you need a central certification authority that gives you certificates in order to exchange couples of private and public keys, to a decentralized PKI where you don't need a single certification authority, but the certification authority is in a public blockchain ledger. So how things changed with the self-sovereign identity? Let's imagine you have been recently graduated at university. You are now a doctor. The university issued to you the credential, the personal attributes, giving you the diploma, signs this credential. The signature is made with a public key that is stored on the blockchain. So only the public key are on the blockchain. Public key is something that is public. It should have been public even without a blockchain. So no secret disclosed. This is called zero knowledge proof. So you have this credential signed by the university. You get it, you sign it again with your private key. So the public key is again on the blockchain, and you give this credential with this double signature to the final verifier, which can be, as an example, an hospital if you're a doctor that wants to hire you. The hospital can verify that you are you because he finds your signature on the blockchain, your public key on the blockchain. So it can decrypt this credential. Again, it has to decrypt again because it has to find on the public blockchain the public key of the university that issued your academic title. So the hospital can read eventually your personal information and decide what to do with your application of being hired. We arrived very fast to the point. Okay, you gave us this fantastic scenario of self-sovereign identity, this use of the blockchain to free ourselves of all this amount of digital identities. What this has to do with the pandemics? Yes, I borrowed part of a very interesting document by the Blockchain Research Institute about one of the use of self-sovereign identity and blockchain in general in time of pandemics. If you look at the point, if we need, and in any pandemics and epidemic approach, let's say, try to control epidemic, you need a big amount of data. So the question is, how many people are infected, where we are located, how many people have met them, etc. This multiplied by the population, it's a big amount of data. Would it be big or small amount of data? The problem is that these data are very personal. My blood pressure, my temperature, not to mention the status of my antibody in my blood, is something I cannot think of nothing more personal than that. So unless we are in a dictatorship, you definitely need to authorize this the approach to this data. And each citizen in the world wants to cooperate with the central authorities in order to fight these pandemics, for sure, but wants to be sure that their data are used by someone they know for the goal that they know. And they cannot replicate that to anyone else, cannot disclose that. And each time that data is used, you know about that. This is an important point. Maybe it couldn't be used currently because we are not still, there are not still a large amount of these systems around the world, but for the future could be important. More than this, it's important the fact that it's not only a problem of privacy seen from the single individual is also a problem of this kind of personal attributes are not forgeable. You cannot say, I cannot say I am another person if my real personal identity comes from the municipality of Rome, as an example. So I cannot show a different health status if they have to be certified by a medical institution, an hospital, etc. So I cannot forge my status because I want to get back at work even if I'm ill, or vice versa. I want to show to be ill in order not to avoid working. So with this system, there is a no repudiation. Other points for sure, for blockchain in general, not only self-sovereign identity, is on the fact that blockchain is a trust machine, and the effort of combating this virus could reach success more easily when there is a common sharing of information. When you share information, you want to be certain that you have shared information, and no one again can say that you shared something that is not good or comes from a different source. Blockchain is the engine that creates the right trust for sharing information, so in research. Even more, and this is my last example, blockchain is something that is strictly linked with supply chain provenance verification. So you can imagine that here, supply chain for goods, for pharmaceutical goods, etc., are of the utmost importance. So having such a supply chain certified or laying over a blockchain is something that will facilitate all these efforts. I think I can elaborate on many of these aspects with many drill down, but that's it on my side for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Malcarne. Thank you very much for the very interesting talk. I will stop sharing now at the presentation, so that we can interact face to face again. Thank you. We have time for still one or two questions. The first one will be, how do you, if individuals are free to create more than one identity, as you have mentioned, how do you think that, like, the fears of having identity falsification and how that can be prevented? How can we combat it with this blockchain?
Yes, you are free to create any identity you want, but the identity you create has not a certification. You cannot verify that someone of the official institution has signed your identity. So it's clear that it's something that you created. If someone to whom you show this, let's say, invented identity is happy with that and let you enter, it's okay. For sure, when someone, as an example, you can imagine one of the largest provider of goods around the globe is not interested into your real identity, is more interested to your credit card and your address because it has to deliver the goods to your home. If you are Francesco Malcarne or are Giovanni Rossi, this is not important for them. So they are happy with any identity you create, as far as your address is a real physical address and your credit card is covered, is a real credit card. That's the answer.
Thank you. And finally, one last question. From seeing the description of how we can use this to track and to combat the pandemics, I see that you rely a lot on the social responsibility and willingness of individuals and citizens to provide their data. However, we have seen that in some countries, people don't trust the governments as much to maybe reach that level of sending their data. I know that, like, indeed, everything would be anonymized if people would want and would be taken care of. But do you think that, like, this can pose as an obstacle if people don't trust the governments to provide the data?
This is not covered by self-sovereign identity for sure. I mean, if you want, it's the opposite. I have more control on my personal data. If I don't trust in the government, I have a mechanism not to share my personal data against my personal opinion and willing, above all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. McCartney, for being with us. For everybody on that site, please don't forget to stay tuned for our upcoming session. What does it take to be a sustainable company nowadays, and why does it matter? Coming up next by Athena Nociopoulou, Communication and CSR Coordinator at Isomat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.